You are listening to the Women Power Podcast, a subsidiary platform to the Women Power Summit, the largest event in MENA, with the aim of empowering women and helping them achieve their absolute highest potential. Each week on the Women Power Podcast, you will hear honest, vulnerable, authentic, real conversations from inspiring women. These women will share their experiences and stories into what it takes to build a successful business and career. The podcast will share insight and inspiration and hopefully inspire action and lead change. Thank you to our friends at Xenon Cycling for sponsoring this episode of the Women Power Podcast. Born and raised in the UK and Saudi Arabia, Dr Alia Komsany is a professional rower from Oxford. Alia encourages women to pursue their unconventional dreams by leading by example. While doing her doctorate in medical science in Oxford, Alia, a former amateur show jumper, was introduced to rowing. After immediately falling in love with the sport, she continued to perfect her technique while also specializing in cancer research. Welcome, Dr Alia. How have you been during COVID? Were you able to get any rowing done during this time?
Yeah, so COVID, surprisingly, I think I'm in that phase where I've kind of adapted to the new normal. I'm an introvert by nature, so I think that can be dangerous in some ways, owing to the fact that I like to stay at home and the self-isolation, it's been not too bad, I guess, for me. But I think it's dangerous in the sense that you can get, used to staying at home and you don't, realize how it's affecting you mentally.
You said that you worked twice a week. Where do you work?
So I work in New York City. I work at Weill Cornell Medicine. So my role is divided. After doing my PhD, it's not the most conventional route that people would take, but I've basically gone into public health, which is something I'm really passionate about. But my role is divided 50-50. So 50% of my time is dedicated to cancer research, so lab work, which, funnily enough, I haven't been able to do because of COVID. But the other 50%, I'm basically the youth program lead for the Office of Engagement and Outreach. And basically what I'm doing is developing educational programs to teach and, the youth. It also involves adults as well, about cancer, the preventative measures that you can take regarding cancer. And especially when it comes to females, cervical cancer, bringing more awareness in relation to that specific cancer. And, a lot of women shy away from kind of pap smears and HPV awareness. And I think it's really, really important because HPV, which is a virus, it can kind of contribute to 70%, up to 70% of cervical cancer cases. So, and many women, I would ask them, a number of friends, female friends, I'd ask them, do you know about this? Oh, no, we don't need that. It's not, we don't need to know this information. It's not something that, it's important to us. So it's really interesting to even see within the Western world, there are disparities when it comes to education and, understanding essentially.
So you have a British accent, I noticed. You're living in New York. You briefly lived in Saudi as a child. Can you tell me the relationship you have with all these three continents or countries?
So it's basically, I would sum it up as an identity crisis. But yeah, so I was born and brought up in the UK, hence my British accent. So my mother, South African. My father, Allah yarhamu, was Saudi. He passed away when I was much younger. So yeah, I was primarily brought up in the UK, and then what happened when I was 11 years old, my brother went to go study in Saudi, in Jeddah. And as a result, the whole family kind of was uprooted and moved. And that's when my mother thought it would be a good idea to put me into a public school. So a completely Arabic speaking school, right? And I had no knowledge. I was a non-Arabic speaker, essentially, coming from the UK. And I think my grades were translated into Arabic, but they thought, oh, this girl's like, really, she can go she'll fit into her grade. And in actual fact, I really, the first couple of years was traumatic, to say the least. But my mother, she kind of encouraged me, you have to push on, you'll really value this experience later on in life. I know what I'm doing. It's good for you. But I went through it was really difficult for me. It was a culture shock. It was, learning a new language in all these different subjects, because, all the subjects are taught in Arabic apart from English. And also when it came to making friends, I think it was really difficult because, of course, I didn't speak the language. So it was initially really difficult to kind of find anyone that I could relate to or kind of, could understand me, essentially. So that was really difficult. But in hindsight, as my mother said, I do really appreciate that experience because I was, I was able to pick up a language. I'm able to read, write, and speak somewhat fluently. At the moment, it's, I'm not using it as much.
A lot of the stories we hear about people growing up in Saudi is just there were different rules for boys and girls. Did you feel that at all with your mom and your household? Or did you feel like, actually, I was really equal to my brother and society or the school was the problem?
So alhamdulillah, in that regard, my mother was really, she really made sure that both of us, both my brother and myself, were treated very much equally. If he had a curfew, I had the same curfew. Both had to be home by 9 p.m. There was no kind of difference between us. And I'm really, really lucky and glad that I did. It's considered a luxury. I know that because a number of people, friends and even family members, they don't have that kind of privilege. Yeah, I'm really grateful for my mother for doing that. And while I can't really kind of describe the feeling of not having to compete, because I haven't experienced it, and that, being equal to my brother was normal for me, I understand and can empathize with people that don't have that luxury. And it can be really challenging. But the way I look at life in general is that it's kind of a balance. So certain things that I didn't have to, contend with and others did, there's always a flip side to that. There are certain challenges that I experienced that other people didn't have.
When did you move back to the UK and why did you move back to the UK?
So we moved back to the UK when I was around 15 or 16, I'd say. And the reason why I moved back was because my grandmother, from my mother's side, so my mother's side of the family, half of them are in South Africa and the other half are in the UK. So she got really ill and my mother felt it was only the right thing was to come back. And of course, we left my brother in Saudi and I came back. So then again, I had the same kind of, a similar culture shock because I'd been out of the UK for so long. My friends who I had known when I'd left had completely changed. My mindset, my worldview also was very kind of different to when I had left. So yeah, it was difficult adapting.
You studied biomedical science at the University College London, and you did your master's in cancer biology at the USL Cancer Institute. How did you even get into science and biology?
Yeah, my brother being a doctor in the medical field probably contributed to that spark. But essentially, as far as I can remember, I've always been kind of like inquisitive by nature, intrigued, and really excited to explore and find out more about how things work, and especially when it came to the human body. I used to find that, and still do very much, find it fascinating, the complexity behind how the human body functions. So I think that's kind of, ever since I was little, I always used to like to experiment with things. And I remember reading on my report card, looking back, under science, the teachers would say, I think she has a future in science. So I had that inquisitive nature, I think, from a very young, age. But also, I think having family members that were diagnosed with cancer, myself having a kind of cancer scare, essentially, I was interested in molecular biology, but why I kind of took the cancer route was, I think that, personally having experienced cancer, not myself, but, having had family members being diagnosed with cancer and myself having a cancer scare, it really, pushed me to kind of that interest in cancer specifically.
Can you tell me more about your scare and which family member who had it that really kind of moved you to go further into the space and explore it?
So basically my auntie, someone quite close to me, was diagnosed with cancer, breast cancer. And so for that reason, it kind of really affected me and it affected the whole family, you could say. It really made me kind of research, do, the background research on, the causes, understand it more. from a scientific perspective. And that's what I think kind of like sparked my interest in how fascinating and complex a disease cancer is. And it gave me that really, it pushed me to kind of want to find out more and really want to work towards kind of, understanding it better and contributing to the field, essentially.
And can you tell me more about your scare? You said you had a cancer scare.
So my scare was more related to, I went to doctor, had a blood test, and they detected, my white blood cell count was low. So that kind of initiated the whole scare. And the doctor, I was very young at the time, and the doctor said to my mother, we may need to do further testing. This may be a potential cancer. So, when you first get told that news, you kind of, oh my God, I'm going to die, that it's that initial fear. And my mother at the time was, she tried to be positive and tried to look at it from a kind of, we'll get through this and we'll stay strong. But it still kind of, it was a moment in my life where I kind of like stood back and realized again that things are not in your control. You don't know what can happen. And I definitely, again, it pointed towards this disease and sparked my interest in the fact that, it's so complex and I can take this direction and potentially help contribute to, better understanding it.
I just found out day before yesterday that like one of my closest friends who lives in Dubai got diagnosed with breast cancer. She still doesn't know what stage yet. She does know she's starting chemo. So, maybe she didn't want to share the stage that she was in. And my grandmother died from breast cancer. Like she got it and it, Allah yarhamha, and it went away and then it came back again. So it does run in my family and I have never been checked. I'm 34 years old and the scare, like I was so fearful that actually my appointment was supposed to be like an hour ago and I moved it to tomorrow. But I'm going to go get checked and it's just, you always feel like it would never happen to you until like it gets really close to home and then it's like a reality slap in the face to go get checked and to just make sure that you're okay.
No, you need to. And this is really important when it comes to screening. And this is what I'm more involved in now with my work, is that we need to encourage, people are fearful. But you know what? Sitting and digging your head in the sand is essentially not doing you any good. And, you'll feel better after, going for screening, getting that reassurance, inshallah. You really need to do that.
I want to kind of segue into your time at Oxford. Obviously, Oxford is such a prestigious school. What made you want to apply there and what did you study?
So it's interesting because, how some people would say that applying to a certain university was kind of like their dream all along. No, it was never my dream. I never actually really thought of it. I never thought I was actually good enough to apply, let alone get in. But funnily enough, after I had completed my master's at UCL in London, I just, I wanted to get out. I wanted to try something new. I needed to get more research experience. I knew that for sure, especially, I was debating whether I wanted to continue down the PhD kind of path. But I knew that I wanted to kind of confirm that and get more experience and determine whether that's what I really wanted to do. So what I did was I applied for several internships and one of them happened to be in Oxford. And again, not thinking I'd get in, I just applied to how you do it. You just apply to millions and whatever, you get one or two back and, you kind of end up going to one of those. And funnily enough, Oxford were the first ones to get back to me. And then my supervisor at the time, he invited me over to have an interview, really informal, really it was really a nice experience. I went to Oxford for the first time. And I think, seeing it's really something else, it's unlike any other university experience, I would say. And you just become overwhelmed by the buildings, the, historical context. And I think at that moment, I was really intrigued by the idea of, leaving London, experiencing something new. I had a really good opportunity to do this internship. So, of course, I went for it. So I did my internship for around 2.5 years. Out of that, I got a publication and I kind of really thought, okay, I think I'm ready to do the PhD, to start the PhD process. And so I applied to do the PhD at Oxford within the same lab because I really liked the environment there. Is really it wasn't so competitive, like most labs are. especially in Oxford, it was really laid back. It was all about, learning and building on your skill set for life as well as kind of for your career. So I applied for the PhD. Initially, I did really badly on one of my first interviews, and I thought, okay, this is khalas, I'm not meant to do this. It was really scary. You have 5 people on the panel and they're asking you so many questions. I literally went blank. So I actually got rejected for that position. And funnily enough, everything works out, but you just don't see it in that moment. So I, of course, was not going to give up. I applied for the second kind of PhD position. And that one, alhamdulillah, I got. Because I think I was a little bit more well-versed on what to say and how to present. And I was more confident. And that actually was the more interesting project out of the two. So these things work out in the end. Yeah, and it's funny because when I got the offer, I remember telling myself, okay, khalas, I've done this bit. I was so scared of failing and not being able to complete the course. I thought to myself, I'm going to frame the offer on the wall and just, say, keep it there and just, say, oh yeah, I got in. I was good enough to get in, but, that's enough. Khalas, that's, enough for me. But, it's all about this whole learning to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, pushing yourself, beyond the limits that in terms of achievement that that you can achieve. So yeah, my brother was like, are you stupid? People would die for this opportunity. It's amazing. And again, like I said, the project was really something that was really interesting. Not much work had been done on it before. So I was literally going to be if I made any discoveries, it was going to be really novel. So yeah, I kind of pushed myself to to kind of start the program, and yeah, that's basically how it happened.
What motivated you to just power through? Because I know at some point you can get demotivated. You're doing a lot of taking in of information, a lot of submissions, a lot of assignments. How do you stay really focused on the goal without getting demotivated?
So with science especially, it's really easy to become demotivated because you spend a lot of time on one experiment. Anything small and minute can go, wrong within that time period. And you may have to start all over again. You get really excited about doing an experiment because you think it's going to give you the answer that you're looking for, and then you're faced with, okay, failure again. So it's very difficult to stay motivated. You're in a lab, it's pretty isolated. Everyone that is around you is talking science. It can get really exhausting. But I think the idea and the knowledge that if I came across any sort of finding, that would be even though no matter how small it would be, that would be such a big contribution to the field. I think that kind of in the back of my head was the momentum for me to keep going. And then when you do have those small little breakthroughs, I think those help in kind of, okay, I've got this. Oh, I'm onto something. Oh my God, this is amazing. And then you sit for like days and days and weeks, analyzing data. So it has its, peaks and troughs and, ups and downs like anything. So I have to say to all those that are listening, postgraduate life is very different from undergraduate life. As a scientist, you don't get to spend time in cafes, unfortunately. Only the time that I was starting, the time at which point I was starting to write my dissertation, that was the only time I got to kind of live the quintessentially Oxford lifestyle of sitting in cafes and pretending to be an intellectual.
Studying for as long as you did, picking the schools that you've chosen to go to, funding that kind of education is not easy. Were you on a scholarship? Did you get a student loan? Were you working on the side to cover your expenses? What was your funding plan?
So with Oxford, it's very difficult to have a job on the side with the amount of time that you have to commit towards the course. So alhamdulillah, I was sponsored by the King Abdulaziz scholarship program, and that enabled me to have a stipend, and they also paid for lab consumables, which really helped a lot because without funding, a PhD can be very expensive.
I feel what positions you really differently to a lot of other influencers or personalities. I mean, a lot of people have done their PhD and are in, science or medicine, but I think the combination of your background in biology and science and also the rowing is really, really interesting, very exciting. So can you tell me how you were introduced into rowing, and tell me about your first rowing experience and what that felt like.
Rowing for me came again, pretty much like Oxford. It was very random. I remember speaking to a friend and they were telling me about the rowing machine and how it's a full body workout and, oh my God, you should try it. And because I've been into sports as a child, my mother was she's an avid water skier, horse rider, into yoga and fitness. So I've always been into sport, but never had the chance to take anything up competitively, really. So when it was suggested to me, why don't you, because I was into strength training at the time, doing a lot of powerlifting, they were like, why don't you try rowing? I was like, I'm at Oxford. Rowing is a very traditional sport. Why would I go to the gym and get on a boring rowing machine as opposed to kind of signing up to my college's rowing club? I'll just do that. So a lot of the things I experienced happened really randomly and spontaneously. So yeah, I signed up, and alhamdulillah, it was summer the time at which I signed up, because normally the freshers tend to sign up they start, trying out rowing in the winter. And I think that would have really definitely deterred me. But I started out in the summer. It was in crew boats, so 8 people. And it involved waking up at getting there at the boathouse for 6:30 a.m. I was not an early bird. I've always been a night owl. So that was the first, oh my God. And you cannot be late, because if you're late, you're letting down the whole crew. These people have gotten up. They're waiting for you. And once that did happen to me, but we won't go into that experience. It scarred me for life. But yeah, that I just got in the boat. It was this, you have to be in synergy with everyone else. Everyone has to be rowing at the same time, placing their blade in the water at the same time. So there's that feeling of camaraderie, and really, it's all a women crew. It's all female crew. So you feel, wow, we're doing this together. It's a collective kind of, effort that we're putting in here. And I made really good friends. It became sort of like a social as well as a kind of a fitness routine for me in the morning before going back in the labs, starting off in the labs. So it really was refreshing. I was at one with nature. I think it was the sunrises. Sorry, we also did have sunsets, but that's the other seasons. But the sunrises that really captured me, and the sound of the water, the moving boat, the way the boat runs underneath you. It's very relaxing. It's it just takes your mind off everything. It literally is an escape.
I know you don't want to talk about that experience where you were late, but can you share it with us? I'm quite curious now.
I didn't wake up. I put my alarm and didn't wake up. And then you get that call from the captain of the club. And they're like, Alia, are you coming to rowing? And I'm like, oh, crap. I look at the time and I'm like, crap. And at that time, I was living in student housing, which was next to the hospital, which was a bike ride down the hill to get to the river. Okay, it would have taken me 20 minutes. And that's like cycling super fast. And I was like, yeah, I'm coming. I'm late. I've just woken up. I just felt so guilty because I could hear in the background, is she coming? Is she not coming? You could hear these people getting so frustrated. And then when I eventually got there, I was hot and sweaty, and they just looked at me and they're like, okay, let's get in the boat. They didn't even say anything. And I kept, I felt so bad. I kept apologizing. And then one of the girls, my friend, she was like, it happens to all of us.
I first discovered cycling classes at my gym in London. I used to go to the Virgin Gym in Kensington, which was this stunning gym, and I was obsessed with their cycling classes. It was like going to a party, but working out. The music was so good, and the atmosphere was so fun, and they were the most sought out classes. So it's great for me to introduce Xenon Cycling as one of our sponsors. I incorporate daily workouts in my routine, and I'm dependent on managing my energy levels to keep myself enthusiastic and active throughout the day. So I more than ever subscribe to the idea behind Xenon Cycling and the convenient and efficient fitness space they have brought to life. Xenon Cycling is a fitness studio dedicated solely to electrifying indoor cycling classes. They offer upbeat and thrilling, high-intensity indoor cycling classes that aim to inspire and challenge those looking for a quick yet fulfilling workout. Xenon also offers a wide range of healthy smoothies at its smoothie lab. These smoothies are made in-house using unique ingredients which work perfectly before or after your workout. Follow them on Instagram and support what they do. Check out @ZenOnCycling and sign up to a class. So let's say you're now in Dubai, you're training, you've been approached by the Olympic Authority in Saudi. What was the process like? Were you training for the Olympics, or was there like a program of competitions for you to sign up to? How did you navigate from training into joining competitions?
So basically, it was still in the very developmental stages. I knew that I'd been in contact with, so while I was in Oxford, I met with the head coach, who happens to be an Olympian himself. And he was they were getting together the athletes there. So they had 2 athletes from Cambridge, and I was from Oxford, and they had another athlete again who was, I think he trained in Egypt. So there was a very small group, and we were I was in communication with the head coach. I had not met any of the other athletes, and I was in communication with the head coach, and he was just saying, what are you doing? This is the, training plan. I need to see kind of your scores every so often, but nothing was set in stone per se. We had no kind of there was no planning ahead for any specific competitions, and I didn't know what we were going to be doing exactly. But I knew that I wanted to get more experience and get more confident in the single scull at least, and kind of start monitoring my progress a little bit more.
Let's say now you're part of a team, or there's a team being developed, you have your head coach, you're training in Dubai. What was your first competition like?
Dubai being Dubai, they didn't really have lanes for racing in. So I have an issue with the single scull. I'm used to having, so in a crew boat, you have a cox who guides you. They tell you go, they can see ahead. They can see if you're going to crash into a tree, and they can guide you accordingly in terms of the navigation. In a single scull, you cannot see behind you because you're rowing backwards, right? You can only see ahead of you, and you have to kind of have really good spatial awareness to kind of see how the lake or the river turns. And of course, me being me in a race setting, not having very much experience in a single scull, I went off course and ended up rowing double the distance. So that was my first experience. It was an interesting one. I think it took away a lot of the fear that I had, because it was really exhilarating, because you're only relying on yourself. You have all this self-doubt at the beginning, at the start line, and you have to overcome it yourself. You have no one else patting your back or behind you saying, come on, we can do this. So it's really, so when you achieve, you get through the finish line, you feel, okay, there's a really, a great sense of achievement there that I didn't capsize.
Are there a lot of women in your sport? Like when you went to that competition in Dubai, what was the ratio like?
So funnily enough, in Dubai, I was really, really impressed with the female turnout, because in Oxford, of course, you have a lot of females, but you don't have very many females that wear a headscarf, or are visibly Muslim anyway. I never came across anyone. And I really felt like I literally stuck out like a sore thumb. I remember, the way they would identify our crew was the fact that I was the one wearing I looked like a yellow lollipop because our colors were black and yellow. So I would wear a yellow headscarf, and they would say, oh, that's Alia, that's our crew. Come on, we can cheer for them. So, but in Dubai, coming to Dubai and seeing, wow, there's so many females. There's so much interest here. I was really, really impressed. And I really felt, wow, this is, something I can really tap into.
So you said you always stuck out like a sore thumb, so everybody could see that you were different. Did that ever bother you? Did anybody ever judge you?
Initially, because, having such a strong-willed, independent mother, I think she kind of instilled in at a very early age to be yourself, to not care about what people thought. And so growing up, I kind of, I had that kind of mentality. But then I think towards my as I kind of approached my teens, I think that's when I kind of became a little bit more self-conscious, and I kind of lost that. I forgot about not caring about other people and what they thought. And, you get comments here and there, and people, saying this and that and staring at you differently. And, especially coming back from Saudi back to London/Oxford again, especially Oxford, because there I really stood out. London is a lot more multicultural, especially at the university. You get a lot of women wearing hijab. It's normal. It's almost normal. People are used to it. Whereas at Oxford, they were really intrigued. They wanted to talk to me to kind of see, oh, does this person speak? Does she have ideas? It was really interesting. But at the same time, kind of like a little bit, I was a bit taken aback by the fact they kind of lacked that exposure in some regard. So I think, and rowing, yes, my friends and the crew that I used to row with were really supportive. So I think that really helped. And again, being in a postgraduate environment, again, you're amongst more mature people, so you don't feel it. You don't feel so much like an outsider, basically, is what I'm trying to say. But there are times, yes, where, I can't take part in the whole celebration with drinks. There are certain events that I didn't feel comfortable attending. Again, the type of clothes that I would have to wear can be a little bit frustrating, owing to the fact that I generally tend to overheat. But at the same time, I want to, I feel comfortable in certain clothes and, wearing certain attire. So for me, at times I did find it challenging. But again, I kind of saw the impact that I was making amongst, changing kind of stereotypes and perceptions. And I think that in itself gave me a strength to kind of really ignore if there were any stares or, sly comments here and there. So I became more comfortable in my own skin.
When did you decide to put on the headscarf? And moving back to the UK, clearly it's a big part of your identity and your lifestyle. What made you kind of continue to keep wearing it?
I think a lot of us like to emulate the female figures in our life, and because my mother came to wearing hijab at a pretty late age, but generally around the time that I was born, I grew up seeing her wearing the hijab, so naturally I thought that's what I have to do without really giving it much thought or understanding, really. So I was essentially copying her. And as I grew up, I began to question. So I wore it before going to Saudi. I wore it at quite a young age, I think 11 or something like that. Yeah, and as I grew, I was fine with wearing it. It became like that was normal for me. It was part of who I was. But I think growing up, I began to question. I did kind of, with challenges that I faced, in relation to how people looked at you and judged you and put you in a box. There was a point in my life where I was like, do I really want to wear it? I really, really did question it. But I think I came to the understanding that it's something personal that you kind of experience between you and God. And for me, the hijab, it means a lot to me. And despite the challenges that I faced, I found that it kind of acted like my compass in kind of keeping me where I was meant to be, and it enabled me to kind of remind myself constantly of my kind of ultimate objective in life. So for me, that was my kind of, I can't explain it really in words. It's very difficult, but it was something really personal to me. And despite all the challenges and all the kind of, different things I faced, I felt I was stronger with it than without.
Is this something you would want to do full time? Would you want to be a full-time professional rower? Or do you feel like, actually, I love being a doctor and being in science, and I love how those two work together?
Again, I love to have my cake and eat it. That's generally the theme of my life. So I try to juggle as many things as I can. At times, to my detriment. But yeah, it's a difficult question because after Dubai, I then moved to New York City, and so. And then again, I didn't want to lose time and miss out on training opportunities. And, the US is brilliant for that, and especially when it comes to rowing. So I found a club and started, without, wasting much time, I started back up rowing again. And at that point, still, I was doing things solo and, it was a bit tentative, not knowing what was going to really happen. And at that time, I was waiting on my work visa. So I couldn't apply. So I think I had gone back, or I was in the process of carrying out my defense in Oxford. So I was doing a fair bit of travel here and there. And so I had gone back to Dubai because I had to kind of close everything up from New York, and I stayed there for a month, and that's when I took part in that competition. And then it came to light that we were, as the Saudi Rowing Federation, were going to take part in the Indo-Asian Champs, basically, which is an indoor rowing competition. So we had to fly out to Thailand. which we did, was another really good experience. You get to know and see the other athletes that you're competing against within Asia. And then after that, I think things became a little bit more formal for me. I had some time on my hands. I was waiting to get my work visa processed. So I thought, you know what, I haven't had this opportunity to solely focus on rowing. Let's see what it's like. So that's when the rigorous training started. And that's when I actually got a taste of what it was like to train as an elite rower. And I can tell you, it's 3 times a day, training 3 times a day, every day, 6 times a week, apart from Sunday where you get off, which you're not completely exhausted. And that was really challenging for me because rowing then became less about, my passion and more about, okay, I really have to work really, really hard and train ridiculously hard to kind of get to that level. And I need to get used to this because this is what it's like to on the journey towards becoming a more professional rower. And that was really stressful because I'm also a lightweight. Although I'm a natural lightweight, I have to maintain a certain weight to enter into competitions. So number one, you're focused on what you're eating. Number two, you're doing 3 times a day training, which is really exhausting. You don't have a social life. People don't understand that you're tired by 9 p.m. You cannot go out. You can't really enjoy yourself. It becomes, you start to question, why am I doing this? At times I would think, have I lost the passion for this sport? It's becoming really grueling. I'd go out on the water and I'm in many ways a perfectionist. So when I would get heavily criticized by my coach, and I have a coach in the US, and through, multiple kind of words of mouth and, trying out different clubs, I came across a really good coach who was willing to train me, very experienced with US elite rowers, etc. So I felt I was really, lucky and privileged to have come across this coach that really wanted to train me, that saw something in me, potential. But at the same time, you have to be prepared to be, you're going to be compared against other athletes. You're going to be criticized constantly. Why aren't you, learning this quicker? You need to do this, you need to do that. And you can imagine how demoralizing it can be. And you're exhausted for one. You don't really have much. So rowing used to be an outlet for me. And now it was literally this full-time, thing that I was doing. And I was literally beating myself up about not being able to master certain things. Because I came to rowing late. So I had a very short time frame in which I had to acquire all these new skills. So pressure. From a PhD, I didn't really have much time to relax, It was just like one jump from one really intense thing to another really intense thing. But surprisingly, out of that whole kind of experience, we went to South Korea. And I went for I competed as a lightweight, Saudi lightweight. It was a really amazing experience because this is the first time, by that time I'd met the athletes. There was another girl, a heavyweight, who was previously a sprinter and came to rowing. So relatively new to the sport. So I met the other athletes. We were, as a group, it was really nice to have we could relate to each other with the training, the heavy training, etc. So we went to South Korea, and I think that was a really good experience for me because I actually, achieved a PB in the single scull, which was, it really motivated me. And I had, I'd seen how much I'd progressed and, being, pushing myself to the very limit. I could see actually, I have something to show for this, I'm not doing so bad for the amount of time that I've put into this sport. Remember, I put in 4 to 5 years in crew boats, right? In a different using a different technique, and then literally 1.5 to 2 in a single scull, which is hardly anything. People, train since since childhood. So that for me kind of was, an achievement that, I've managed to kind of really gain a lot of confidence. I've also, being in a single scull gives you a lot of independence. You don't have to wait on a crew. You go out when you want. You're reliant on yourself, which I really liked. But yeah, I had that experience of full-time rowing, and it was crazy. It was hectic. And I did at that point, I guess, I think I needed a mental break, because it takes a mental toll on you. And at that point, that's when I got my work visa came through, and I was like, okay, I shouldn't really waste time. I've already kind of dedicated a lot of time to rowing now. I think, and it's funny, because my coach actually says, Alia, I think you will become much better a much better at rowing, a much better rower, if you take the focus, the sole focus away from rowing, and it becomes your passion again. And you don't feel that you're putting I'm not the type of person that likes to put all my eggs in one basket. So I really enjoyed and I really excelled in rowing when I had kind of my academic side to accompany it. It's funny. And yeah, that's what he said basically.
So it seems to me like they both balance themselves out. Like you need the rowing to do the science, you need the science to do the rowing, and it gives you probably enough mental stamina to enjoy both, and they both probably give you a lot of energy and stimulate you. My question is, why did you go to New York? So did you go there for a job position? Did your husband have to move there, so you moved with him?
So my husband actually got transferred from Dubai to New York. So I literally had no choice in the matter. I was dragged along, which usually happens, and you can kind of witness throughout my life. Yeah, but it was, again, initially I was like, oh, fearful. I'm going to a city, another city. I'm used to Oxford. I'm used to my kind of, what I'm familiar with. And America is very different to the UK. So that in itself, but then rowing for me, it's funny because rowing is like the one familiar thing, and that I find everywhere. I manage to find everywhere I go, and it provides me with that comfort, and it helps me, really, really helps me towards, getting into a routine, and, kind of grounding me at the same time.
So as an athlete and as a rower, are you currently making any money as an athlete to further support you? Or do you feel like, actually, I haven't figured out a way to monetize this yet?
I'm not sure if you know, but rowing is generally not a well-paying sport at all. And, rowing is my passion project, basically. I like to call it that. And I'm not in it for the money. However, as any kind of passion, you have to make sacrifices and choices. And yeah, it's been challenging, but I'm primarily self-funded, which I don't mind, again, because it is my passion. It is something that I see myself continuing with throughout my life. The lovely thing and the most beautiful thing about rowing is that there's no age limit per se. Okay, you're gonna have there's gonna be a limit to how much competitive rowing you can do, but essentially, I go to the local club and you see people who are 80 still rowing, so it's amazing.
Do you feel like you've inspired women to pursue sports, especially modest women, to pursue sports or rowing? Have you seen anybody really impacted by your experience and your journey?
So I know while in Oxford, I did kind of hold like a sort of talk that I had with some friends and other women from the Muslim community. And it's interesting to get their feedback. I always like to get feedback because, again, rowing was a passion for me. I didn't realize the impact I was having until, much later on in the game. And people would approach me and say, oh my God, you inspire me to go out and lead a healthy life. You inspire me to take up sport, And so from those kind of talks that I had, kind of roundtables that I had, it was interesting to note that a lot of women, especially women that wear hijab, and also including those that don't, are just really kind of very self-conscious about going to gyms, sweating, wearing certain clothes. And I realized there are a number of barriers that are holding back women from our community, people from, our backgrounds, from, taking up sport, whatever sport it may be, or just maintaining a, healthy level of fitness. So I get a lot of feedback, and it's really, really it's really nice to hear when people tell me, you made me go to the gym today. You really pushed me, seeing a picture of you or a video or, seeing one of your stories on Instagram really pushed me to go out there and, overcome my kind of personal battles.
Do you feel like you're Saudi? Do you feel like you're British? Do you feel like you're a citizen of the world? It feels to me like if we could be talking about Saudi, we could totally position you as a Saudi athlete, one of the first if not the first, Saudi rowers to represent the country. And then it feels to me like you're also very British, and you studied in England. And how do you feel like your identity is positioned?
It's really difficult for me to kind of describe my identity. And when people ask me where I'm from, I find that really a really difficult question to answer, because I do feel parts of me identify with different countries. So I do value the time that I spent in Saudi. I still hold on to certain I think that was a really formative time, the time I spent in Saudi. It really did shape me in certain ways. But at the same time, as I've gotten older, I've become more accepting and I've realized how British I am at the same time, which is really weird, because my brother would tell me, oh no, you're British. And a lot of people would they love to kind of define me and place me in a box. Because it's much simpler to do that, I guess. And so, my brother said, oh, you don't realize it, but you're so much more British than you think. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And then as time goes by, I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I think I am. It's very weird. But yeah, like I say, I don't want to place myself in a box. I guess I'm a citizen of the world. Like I say, certain aspects of my personality, I identify more with certain countries. But yeah, I'm a bit more, I guess I'm more of a free spirit, I would say.
One word we've heard a lot over the past 3 weeks is pivot. The world has changed, businesses are changing, and now more than ever, we need to come together as a community to combine our resources and start planning the best path forward. Which is why we're hosting the Women Digital Festival. Our event will be 2 jam-packed days of digital conversations, panels, and the best in the biz. This stay-at-home digital summit will be held on November 15 and 16 and is great for small business owners, entrepreneurs, creators, and young professionals and boss ladies. It'll be all about building, growing, and pivoting in the new normal. Our topics will cover money, wellness, lifestyle, and how to make the most of these strange times. Whether it's a session on how to create the perfect stay-at-home office or manage your finances, to experiencing our virtual expo, virtual goodie bags, and an opportunity to network online with the delegates, we have you covered. For only $53, you can have access to that and so much more. Sign up in the link in the bio of our Instagram account. See you there. So you got married, and again, I never really kind of go into relationships. I don't want to kind of define the women by their spouses. Like, I like to focus on just women, but I am very curious. So first of all, how did you meet your husband? And I'm sure he's so supportive. I'm just guessing from your personality that he's just loves what you do and is like so on board with your different passions. How has your life changed since you've been married?
So he's been really, really supportive of like my sporting goals, my career goals. And in fact, I'm a little bit of, like I mentioned, I'm a little bit of a free spirit, wild at heart. And he's the opposite. He's an accountant. He's into finance. So he's very much calculated risks. We must assess things. Look, we have to kind of build now for the future, that kind of thinking, as opposed to, and no, none of this spontaneity, this is crazy behavior. So I think it's interesting, although we're opposites in that sense, I've learned so much from him in terms of managing finances, building for the future, looking long term as opposed to short term, understanding the need, to make sacrifices, and ultimately he's a very, very much of a family man. And in some, I tend to get carried away with my passions. And I think he helps to ground me and refocus my priorities and reminds me, I really, really do kind of appreciate how much he reminds me of what's important in life. And he really does put my best interest at heart. So if he sees me going down, which happens a lot, going down a rabbit hole, and I'm really stubborn and strong-minded and I'm not going to let anyone stop me, I'm that kind of person. He knows how to kind of approach me in a very delicate way, but very kind of, he knows how to position himself such that he will tell me, look, Alia, stop, think, reassess. the path you're going down is going to be destructive. I can see how it's going to pan out. You have to listen to me. And it does really help to kind of align me better. And I've learned to kind of, adopt his way of thinking almost in the way I live my life.
It feels like you're doing a lot, which is really exciting. You have this thriving career. You have this, job now in New York. You are rowing, and you're kind of rowing for fun, but you also, I think anything that you do, you take quite seriously and you want to be good at what you're doing. And you got married. What are some of your tips on like productivity or just making sure that you keep all your ducks in order?
I have learned along the way how to properly time manage my day. And that I think is really essential. I've also realized, and I think I was living in a little bit of a la-la land to think that I could have my cake and eat it. And I could have everything. Ultimately, I think women can, to a certain extent, have everything, but they have to be able to prioritize. They have to also be able to understand that they may have to take different routes to get to their end goal. They also need to kind of be flexible in the way they look at things. They have to be willing to make the sacrifices, because ultimately as women, there is that pressure to kind of, withhold the family, prioritize kind of having children, as well as all her other kind of passions in life and goals. So time management is really, really important. And I've learned to kind of, certain things have to be prioritized above other things.
Is having a baby or having a child something that you would want to experience? And how do you think that's going to impact your athletic career?
So I think initially the way I viewed children was, oh my God, getting pregnant would be a disability almost. Like, it's a very dramatic kind of outlook, I know, but I know a number of people who share that fear almost of, oh my God, everything's going to come to a standstill. I'm not going to be able to pursue anything that I want to do. Having a child is going to take up so much of my time. But again, I think this is one of the blessings of being able to, being stuck at home, being able to reevaluate things and spending a lot more time with my husband and thinking and having more discussions about, starting a family. And it's kind of, and just speaking to friends as well who have had children and family members as well, I realized actually, I don't know where I got this kind of impression that it has to be, so kind of debilitating almost. No, I think life goes on. Yeah, I mean, it's a new set of challenges and you're going to have to learn how to overcome those. But I know athletes, now it's becoming more prominent that you see, athletes having children, Serena Williams, a number of other, elite athletes, and a number of rowers as well, who have come back to the sport, who, in fact, as my coach says, come back stronger. So, but having had the time to think about it a little bit more, I've changed my kind of perspective, and I definitely I don't want to be waiting too long to have children. So that's something on my to-do list. And I think I'm now have a little bit more of a positive view about having children. So I definitely think I can manage, inshallah, be able to manage, continue on with rowing. There's no reason to stop. It's a really good sport to continue on with while pregnant if you can, because it's low impact, it has so many benefits and it's a full body workout. So I don't see why not. No, why I couldn't continue, with my career goals, with my sporting goals. Okay, have to take a slight detour, may take longer. There'll be new challenges that I may have not planned, but I think it's all doable. Nothing is impossible.
Once again, I want to thank our friends at Xenon Cycling for sponsoring this episode of the Women Power Podcast. Follow them on Instagram and support what they do. Check out @Xenon Cycling and sign up to a class. That's it for this week. Thank you for listening to an episode of the Women Power Podcast. And thank you for downloading and streaming our podcast every week. If you love what you've heard, tag us on Instagram and follow the Women Power Podcast and Women Power Summit account for more information on our next episode. Please leave a rating review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps other women discover the show. That's it from me. See you next week.